right, I'm excited to introduce our featured founder for today. It is Chari Pack. As a child, Chari spent hours watching her grandfather set up reels to his 35mm projector and watch family videos with no sound, of course. She loved visiting her local Pebbles in My Pocket with her mother, die cutting and scrapbooking high school, then marriage and baby books. Chari found joy in documenting through photos, even as a young child, and years later, storytelling is still her passion. In 2009, Chari discovered digital scrapbooking with Photoshop. However, she could not find a quality archival 12 by 12 print at an affordable price. After a long search, she saw a need and created her own, founding Persnickety Prints in 2010, an online and local photo boutique. Persnickety Prints grew to $1 million in revenue in the first 3 years while staying bootstrapped and debt-free. Last year, Chari sold Persnickety Prints so that she could focus on her next business venture, a new app, Persnickety Box, giving us a solution to camera roll overload. Please welcome Chari to the stage. Yes, thank you for being here. Yes, right here on the blue couch.
Everyone.
Okay, we're so excited to learn more about Persnickety Prints and Persnickety Box.
Happy spring break, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Yes. Okay, so Chari, let's just start. Tell us a little bit more about kind of your background in scrapbooking and photos and why that is so meaningful to you.
Oh, where do we start? Mark?
Good question.
So yeah, photos have always been important to me. I grew up with family around me. We always looked at photos. We watched family home videos on Sunday nights, and then when you deal with family or loved ones passing, you realize that photos really are everything. And it's always been really a passion of mine. They're also very healing, and I've been, even as a little girl, I would save all my babysitting money to buy film so that I could develop photos and make scrapbooks and yearbooks and sell whatever I could. Is this mic working? It's kind of echoey. Is that normal? Okay.
It's great. Sorry, you have two for online.
Okay.
Since that might be causing the echo, but
no worries.
Okay, so you said that you would make scrapbooks and you even sold them. Who would you sell them to?
In the 5th grade, now you guys, I'm a little bit older than many of you, and we didn't have a 5th grade yearbook, and I was very social, and I took pictures. I took my camera to school, and I was like, why don't we have a yearbook like all the older kids? And so I cut and scrapbooked yearbooks and sold them for $5 a yearbook in 5th grade at Orchard Elementary in Orem.
So you were an entrepreneur since the age of what, 8?
I guess so. Lemonade stand, all the things. You know, you grow up poor and you have to work for everything and you just figure it out. I think that's one disservice we have to our kids sometimes, is giving them everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm here to tell you all the things to inspire you guys to get out there and hustle, because I grew up with the odds very much against me in starting a business, for sure.
So tell us more about that. Why do you feel like the odds were against you? What did that look like in your life?
So starting from the beginning, and I don't want to do all the talking, Brittany. You just let me know.
You are here all founder. I'm just here.
I want to inspire everyone that's listening that you can do it too. Because if I can do it, you can do it. In reality, every person, every entrepreneur is different. They have different strengths, weaknesses. Every business model is different. Even when I come to, Rev U's and listen to Amazing Skillstruck, and sometimes we have the comparison, in us, all of us, and it's like, oh, they did that, or, you hear in Utah a lot, like, so-and-so raised $20 million in funding, and that's all great, but that doesn't mean that that's the right fit for you. And so I'm here, just to tell you that keep following your passions, and every entrepreneur, every business, everybody defines success differently. So if success to you is money, then great. Maybe it's great to be in a sales position or raise funds to grow quickly. If your definition of success is balance in life or financial freedom, which it was for me, and that kind of came later, but really to start from the beginning, I just saw a need and a problem and went out and tried to find a solution, and really, which is what business and inventions are, right? But I think you know, one thing I try to teach my boys is just to get out and experience life, because how do we find needs to problems if we're not out there experiencing different things, right? And so even the littlest things, like you could be skiing and you could be like, oh, I wish this ski boot clipped differently. Oh, you know, just little things like that. Think outside of the box for all of you that really have that innate entrepreneurism in you. Because I didn't ever set out to start a business. That's what I think was a little different about me. I had no business plan, zero education, had no clue what I was doing. And I think part of the naivety really was great because I just did stuff and I didn't realize that there was failure or I was doing it wrong. I just tried everything. And I think that's why the odds were a little bit against me. I look back now and I'm like, oh, if I had a team that really knew how to really optimize this time, because persnickety prints blew up really, really fast. But I was just riding the wave, and I could have optimized it a little bit better.
I really like what you said there, just experiencing the world and finding those little problems. And I think that really is the key to getting to to eventually starting a company. Is you're not just going to one day wake up with this idea of, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a company. It's like little bits at a time where you kind of have these little ideas and you try something and you fail and you figure it out. So when you were initially starting Persnickety Prints, I'm sure you didn't just one day wake up and say, okay, I'm going to go open a store where people can print their,
no,
like those. Yeah. How did you get to
yeah, I'll tell you. Exactly. I mean, there's so many things. Like you younger people, like, okay, listen, I say younger because I just had a knee replacement and I feel really old. So be careful out there on the ski slopes, guys. But listen, I feel like the world, like if I could have been born 10 years later, I'm just like, oh, I could have done this and this and this. I didn't even have like the internet really, you know? And I was just telling my son, I'm like, to go on a trip, I had to go to Murdoch Morris Travel or something down the street and like get a piece of paper for a ticket to get on an airplane. Like there's so much at our fingertips right now. I think entrepreneurism, I think a lot of young kids see, not young kids, I think a lot of us see the end result of a business and starting it, and we don't realize how hard it is to get to that end result. And so I see a lot of people that start businesses quit, or like, no, this is too hard or whatever, but it's been hard for everyone. Like there's no get rich quick, there's no easy way to make money. So I really feel like following your passion is the best way to wake up every single day and not feel like you're having to go to work. If you're really passionate about something, and sometimes it takes time to find that. So I started my business when I was 35 years old. And, you know, a lot of younger kids too are like, I'm going to, you know, be the next, you know, millionaire at age 30. But why? Like we have our whole life to live, and it's such a fun journey. It's all in the journey. So when I was about 35, I had 3 little boys, and I was a stay-at-home mom. You know, I did all the things. I was this entrepreneur inside of me, but I mean, let's be honest, I worked at the Gap for 10 years folding clothes, but I learned things. I learned things everywhere that I went. I learned all about sales at the Gap and merchandising, and then I was always really obsessed with photos, and I took pictures of my kids, and then this new camera came out, and I love technology. When I was in high school at Orem High, go Tigers, I was out on the football field with the VHS camcorder filming for Tiger TV that we would edit VHS to VHS tape while my friends were cheerleaders and things like that. I've just always loved multimedia, but this new Nikon D90 had just released, and it was the DSLR camera that also did video. And I'm like, oh, I want this camera so bad. It was $1,200. And I couldn't justify it. I had 3 little kids, 1 in diapers. But that was just kind of my goal. Like, someday I'm going to get that camera. I love it. This is so cool. But on the side, I was scrapbooking. But we weren't rich. We didn't have enough money to have like the craft room like the other moms. And so it was really hard for me to get like the tape and the glue and the scissors out and put a scrapbook page together. My boys were all over the place, and then I'd have to put it all away because I'd have to use the kitchen table. Well, I saw one day somebody had made a digital scrapbook page on their computer, and I'm like, what? What is this Photoshop? What? This is a drop shadow? It looks like it's popping off the page. So I saw this 12 by 12 digital scrapbook page with all these photos, and they had typed up their journaling. And I'm like, this is so cool. And you don't even have to like make a mess. It's just on a computer. And that's where it all began. And so I decided that I was going to learn Photoshop. And so I, being the mom, and all I knew was Dora, the explorer at that time, like your education level goes way down after you stop learning and just become a mom, right? And so I decided that I was going to learn Photoshop, and I went and took a class at U at night. It was like the community ed class. And I went there and took a Photoshop class. Now, the teacher was named Rex Allen, and he's cool. I think if I tell his part of the story, he may have another story. But Rex Allen was the teacher, and he was kind of teaching us how to make scrapbook pages digitally. And I'm like, no, let's get to the good stuff. Like, show me how to put a picture and the text and all that stuff. Anyway, throughout the class, we learned all this. And then at the end, of course, he's like, and then print your 12 by 12 pages at Allen's camera in Orem. We're a professional photo lab. Print your pictures, here's a coupon. And so I went and printed my 12 by 12 digital scrapbook page, and I was already printing them at Costco for $3.99. So these pages, and you put them in the albums, and I was blown away by the quality. I'm like, how in the world can it look this much better? And I printed the same picture both places, and I'm like, this is wild. But Rex, you're also $12.99 a page, and nobody can afford that. So if there's a way, and then I realized, so the internet's kind of new. For those of you that know what a blinky is, or a sidebar on a blog, blogging was starting to happen, and people were blogging, and there was this way of marketing, and I've always been very scrappy. I'm like, if I put a blinky on your blog that links to my blog, then we can swap blinkies, and we can be marketing for each other. So I was trying to tell Rex that these ladies were doing this. I'm like, there's this whole digital scrapbooking community, and they're using forums, like these places where you can go chat and like share your layouts, right, Mark C. Strand? And he knows this world. And Rex is like, wow, that's crazy. Okay, well, let's figure this out. So we started a company together called scrappingsimply.com. And I didn't want to be paid. I just wanted that D90 in his window. And so I'm like, look, I'll help you understand the market here, the female market, but I'm going to help you for like a month or two, but then I want that camera. And that's how it started.
And you got the camera.
Got the camera. I still have the camera.
Oh, I love it with me. Still have the camera. That's awesome. So, Chari, why is it important to you that people print their photos rather than just looking at them on their phone or having, like a digital frame in their house or whatever? What do you think is the value of having that physically in your hand?
Well, we can get into all that too, Brittany. Mostly when you start understanding technology, and for those of you that maybe have an iPhone, if you've noticed that iPhone changed their photo format from a JPEG to HEIC is the new standard. And for me, I would save all my photos in iPhoto libraries. And then I thought I was doing this great service to my kids, and I would save the iPhoto library to a CD for backup. But now I can't even access the CD because I don't have iPhoto library 4.1 to access it. And so when you start learning all of this stuff, I see the big picture, and I'm thinking 20, 30 years in advance, and most of us are not thinking that way about our pictures. I've seen files be corrupt, computers crash. So many people rely on social media for backup. And so I'm just sitting here waiting for all of the world to realize that a printed photo, it doesn't have to be every picture because we're taking so many, but, a printed photo a tangible printed photo is really the best way to tangibly hold that memory. You can do a lot more with a small print, than you can with a file that has been corrupt or compressed or, lost all the pixels. You need 300 dots per inch to print a nice picture. People, funerals will come up, and people would come to us in Persnickety Prints, and they'd be like, I need all these pictures, but they only have a Facebook, and that's the only thing I can access of this person's life. And I'm like, well, I can't pull them off of, I mean, Facebook, they're like 4x6 size. Like, you want all these pictures for their funeral, it won't happen. And so I think people are slowly starting to realize that, I've seen this whole cycle that really we need something tangible in order to keep that legacy alive.
I also think it's so fun to touch it and feel it. And because even just on, I think it was Sunday, it was Easter Sunday, I was at my in-laws' house and we whipped out the scrapbooks and I'm like looking at my husband as a baby and all this stuff. And it's fun to see it and feel it and touch it and hold it.
Yeah, and so kudos for your mother-in-law for having that.
Yes, I will let her know. Approve. No, it really is. It's so fun to see them and even to display them in your home.
Mhm.
You need those prints, and it captures a memory, so it's important.
I mean, for young parents, there really are statistics that show that kids feel more part of something, and children feel this sense of belonging when they see themselves or a photo. And like, I mean, we can get into the emotional part of it, but like, I have daddy issues. Like, my dad kind of didn't show up in life after I was about 15 years old, but I have photos of me as a baby with him. And so sometimes I'll go back to that and I'll go, okay, he really did love me, you know. And like, there's a lot of emotion around a photo. And if my mom didn't print those, I'd probably not have positive memories.
Yeah. Okay, let's kind of pivot back a little bit into some more business and strategy type stuff. So you, with Persnickety Prints, you were a solopreneur, right?
Mhm.
So talk to me about the pros and cons of being a solopreneur.
Tax write-offs. That's the only pro. I learned that if I were to draw and I had a partner, they have to draw too. You guys, I didn't know anything. So this is where I'm saying, like, if you have the will and the determination to do whatever you're going to do, you'll figure it out. We have Google at our fingertips. I Googled everything. But if we want to get back to the story, I started that business with Rex Allen, and I had no idea what that meant. I thought you just shook hands and you became business partners, and I was a 20% owner. So for 8 months, I worked really, really hard to build scrappingsimply.com. And I learned a lot, but I also learned that it wasn't an actual business. It was a DBA of his parents' company at Allen's Camera, and that there wasn't much of a future. And I feel like I sacrificed a lot, and I had created this whole network of scrapbookers. And so finally I left, but I was so frustrated because I had invested so much time into it. And I'm like, and I know these ladies need these prints. And also, I found a way that I could price that 12 by 12 at $1.99, where Costco was $3.99. There was, with the right machine and the right operational like setup, you really could do a high volume product and make a great profit margin at a lower price point with better quality. And so I left and I went and knocked doors. I went to every photo lab in Utah County and halfway to Salt Lake. And I'm like, I have this customer base and I have these customers and I have this business idea, but I need a machine. And these machines are like $120,000 machines. It's not like an inkjet that you'd buy at Staples. These machines are darkroom prints. I brought some with me, but these prints are like film. So that's part of my passion too, is it needs to be printed in a format that's actually going to last. So there's no ink involved. You take a digital file and you process it through developer stabilizer, bleach fix, just like film. It dries and it comes out. And I needed that machine. So I went around, people were like, no, who's this crazy lady? I would like order pictures from different labs to like double check the quality. I'd go pick it up and I'd be like, hey, my kid's in the car with their suckers. I'm like, so I have this business and all these customers. And it was just like, no. And then I got a call back from Kenny at Kenny's Photo. He is in Orem, right next to Chuck E. Cheese on Center Street. And he's like, what's this idea that you have? And I'm like, all right. So I went to him and kind of pitched my idea, and he was very ambitious, and I didn't realize he was in financial debt. But again, I trusted everybody and everything, and so I'm like, yeah, let's go do this. And he's like, 50-50, right? And I'm like, yeah. So I went to an attorney, had an LLC written up, but I didn't realize then that I had just entered into a marriage, a business marriage, that I had no love for, and it was very hard to compromise with Kenny. So I ended up buying him out. And off we went.
My seat here. How did it turn out?
You guys want all the tea? Okay.
So you went in 50-50, and then what?
So that didn't work out for me very well. It's also hard. You know, I never thought, oh, a woman in a business world or a woman in a man's world, because believe me, I got all the, what are you doing? Why are you opening a photo lab? Photo labs are closing. It's 2009, by the way. The market had just crashed. People were losing homes. But to me, I'm like, this is great. I can buy the photo labs, or I'll take over your used equipment. And so I think one thing too is just getting out of your head and getting out of your own way when you're an entrepreneur, and looking as sometimes things as opportunities. But back to the Kenny story. So yeah, I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't have a strategy. I just knew that I had made 6,000 connections. I had an email list of 6,000 ladies, and that they needed this product. And so we worked for about 6 to 8 months, and it just wasn't working. He wanted to draw. This is when I learned about drawing and finances. And I'm like, no, we need to buy another machine. Christmas is coming. We need to get a press machine. I mean, these machines that one was 60,000. And so we need to save everything so that we can buy the next machine. And he wasn't willing to do that. So we had some legal issues. We even went to, you can go, by the way, if anyone's struggling with their business partner, there is such a thing as therapy or mediation for business partners. I learned that too.
I did not know that. Great tip. Business partner therapy. So, okay, you just said something really interesting. So he wanted to draw, and you wanted to keep all the money in the business. Talk to us about why that's a good strategy, but how do entrepreneurs know when it's okay to take a paycheck versus keeping it invested in the business?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, that's a great question. I just ran a lean, I've always been very conservative with money, and to me, money equals freedom. And so to be tied down by loans or borrowing from anyone, I wanted to stay lean. And so I got really creative. And I think it's very situational. I was lucky enough to be married, and my husband made a decent income, right? Not enough to justify the $1,200 camera, but I didn't need to draw. So, you know, I understood Kenny's need. He also had another side business too. But it was hard because I saw this future and he was kind of tapped out. And so, I mean, there's so many things that going into a partnership that really should be looked at before you just jump right in.
Yeah. And how would you recommend that people kind of assess that partnership before signing a contract with
Just like a marriage, I would date for a long time. Date them and see what their goals are, and communication and yes, listening and understanding and all of those things. It is a marriage without the love dynamic for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So then eventually you did start Persnickety Prints, and this time you were kind of flying solo and you got to make all the decisions. What was that experience like? How was it different from what you had experienced before?
Super scary. Had no clue what I was doing. I finalized my buyout from Kenny. I had car loans were really low for some reason at that time, like 2 or 3%. And I had an old car that was paid off. So I went to the bank and got a loan against my car and paid him half of $60,000 was my payout, because we'd only been in business for months. And bought him out. Off he went, and I stood there in this storefront. And by the way, I have this brick and mortar store. I'm trying to understand what a lease agreement is, and I have like one employee that was Kenny's old employee. He did not respect me very well, and I had no clue what I was doing. It was October of 2010, and I put an ad out on KSL, and I hired 5 people in one day. And I'm like, okay, so when a customer comes, this is what we're going to do. And it was just very, very like, here we go, just thrown in the fire.
One step at a time.
Mm-hmm, exactly. But back to the scrappy stuff. I'm such a visual person. So
Show us.
hopefully this would be interesting to you guys. So I was going back on my pictures because I love taking pictures of everything. I feel like entrepreneurs too, sometimes it's like, oh, we need to have the glass house up on the Lehigh corridor with our big name in order to be a legit business, right? Or we need to have all this money, this funding or whatever. And I didn't believe that. I didn't want, it wasn't really about the name or the status. It was me wanting to build this business and not fail. You know, there's a lot of fear and failure. I failed obviously along the way, but I just didn't want to quit. And I'm like, okay, how can I do this? Well, so here's a picture. This is an 8x10, and I wrote 2011. This is Borders Bookstore in River Woods, if anyone remembers that. This is their customer service desk. And so sad for all these businesses in 2010 that were going under, but they were closing, so they were selling all of their fixtures for 50% off. And I bought that for $400. And then I took it into my store and DIY'd it and painted it and put some silver panels on there to make it look all cool and modern. And then when we moved to our next location, I took that part off, and now it's this cool reclaimed wood. And it's still there today. That's the front desk at Persnickety Prints. And so that was a $400 piece of furniture. That was bought. And then the Gap at Provo Town Center closed, so I went and got some fixtures there, and it's still in our lobby. And anything that we could do marketing, I never paid for marketing. The Orem Summerfest that we go to at Rev Road, I was out there walking the parade line, handing out coupons to come and print their pictures at Persnickety. And there's so many ways you can get creative when it comes to marketing. Starting a business.
Did you sneak yourself in the parade line, or were you official?
Oh, not official. No, rodeos, parades, whatever we could do, any crowd. We were handing out. My poor son, I made him stand on State Street in a gorilla costume. Yes, anything. And there's so many ways to market for free for an e-commerce or a B2C company.
Okay, so you claim that you spent $0 on marketing with Persnickety Prints and you got to $1 million in revenue. What were some of those marketing strategies besides walking parade lanes?
Blinkies, a lot of traded blinkies. I spent hours online, and this is where the hustle comes in. And to be honest, if I had maybe looked outside and I started not trusting people, which was the sad thing because of business transactions that didn't work out. And so I was like, I'm going to do this. And it was hard for me to start delegating at that point. And so I would stay up till 2-3 a.m. and be on forums. And it was kind of like direct sales. I saw that there were scrapbook designers that had a whole audience. And this is before influencers. Instagram also launched in 2010, and people started printing, or people were taking pictures and cropping them square, and no one else was printing square. So we were very forward thinking, okay, now we're going to print square. Just utilizing and watching the market trends and how it was moving, and just trying to stay current. Because, to be honest, on those downward turns in an economy, if you can pop up and be that, the photo labs were closing because not only was the economy suffering, but people were transitioning from film to digital. So people weren't even printing their photos that much. So I had to also keep print relevant. But we did it in a fun way. Facebook was so much easier, and there were no algorithms. So there was a little bit of luck, I think, in my timing. But we were just very scrappy, a lot of collabs with other companies, and, hey, throw us in your newsletter, I'll throw you in mine, a lot of negotiating with that, and just being really creative and thinking outside of the box. But I went to UVU and had a 2-year degree in business that took me 6 years to get because I didn't want to get into debt, and so I paid for that myself. But I didn't have any education. You guys are here at Rev Road, there's so many resources and so many tools here that I didn't have, that if I did, I probably would have been a lot more profitable. But it is what it is.
So then eventually you sold Persnickety Prints. At what point did you feel you were ready to sell? How did you know that you wanted to sell, and then what did?
Yeah, that's a good question. And keep me on time. I have no idea what time it is.
We've got some time still.
Because I can keep going.
Keep going.
And you guys ask me questions. We can get to the question. I like, a dual conversation here. But so I worked for 13 years building persnickety prints, and recently just sold it last summer to an e-commerce company out of Texas, which is very interesting. They have yet to walk in the front door since they bought it, but my same team is still running it. They have a lot more resources than I have. So to answer your question, I started out, like, if anyone's ever done e-commerce, if you're selling anything on Etsy, you've got to start somewhere, right? I didn't even pay for a shipping program. I would handwrite customer names, like in my handwriting on their box, take my 6 boxes a day, stand in this stupid line at the post office so that they'd weigh each one, and I'd pay for it on a credit card until I could justify the $89 ShipStation program. And then it would come down to, when I got to, this was during COVID, I mean, we're shipping out thousands of boxes a day, right? And I'm like, and this was a couple years ago. So your question, I think to sell, so it's my baby, right? You start a business, it's your child, it's my 4th child, I'm so emotionally invested in it, but I also want it to succeed, and I feel like I was the one stalling it a little bit because there's so many opportunities with it. Expansion, going into different markets, buying up new equipment that I just didn't feel like I was capable of doing myself, nor did I have the energy to build out more teams. So I just felt like it was time to like take it to the next level. Our sales would continue to grow every year, and I did turn into a numbers person because I wanted to always challenge myself to be 10% more every year at least. And finally it's to the point where I'm like, okay, we need to have APIs, there's AI now, there's all of these things, and now it's a lot harder to market online. I've got to have a digital marketing team. We need to be running Google ads. I've never done any of that. It was a bootstrap business. I didn't spend a lot on marketing, and there's a lot more opportunity there. And so I sold it to a company that has those resources.
First of all, I just want to highlight that introspect, that you realized that you might be the one holding it back from growing it even bigger. I think that says a lot about your character, and that people, you know, need to just realize what their own strengths and weaknesses are and where they're willing to give their time, and it might not have been worth it to you at the time to put in that extra energy to grow it. It was time to sell. So I just think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I totally just had a brain fart. I was going to ask you a question about selling. So then what does that process look like to sell? Like, how do you find someone to buy your company?
If Aaron were here, have you guys, has anyone ever sold a company? You guys,
there's like 2 people in this room raising their hand. I don't know if you guys online, but
okay, it's so hard. Like, and also I went through a divorce, which is not ideal either, but this was harder than that. In a sense of paperwork, in a sense of, I mean, when somebody buys your business, they want to see every line item. I mean, they wanted 10 years back, and I'm like, and I'm writing off Botox, okay? So they're like, what are all these ad backs? Wait, now, did you really make that much money? I'm like, yeah, it's a tax. It's an expense. I don't tell the IRS, but no, they want to see all ad backs. I mean, it's like paperwork, negotiations, tons of negotiations. I didn't sell it for the price, of course, I thought it was worth. So to start over, first I kind of dated a few companies that I thought would be a good fit. Because again, it's my baby. So I want somebody to take it, and I had some ideas in my head. I want the name to stay the same.
It's like getting a son-in-law or daughter-in-law.
Yes, and I choose or adoption. But I knew I wanted to keep the legacy alive. I cared more about the customers and my employees the most. So as long as they were taken care of. But when I got this broker, when you list a business, it's kind of like an MLS for like a home. And they don't necessarily list it with your name. So they'll say Utah company, printing lab, making X amount of money. And then they throw it up on this MLS. So people will come in, and you're on phone calls constantly with potential buyers, right? And they're asking all the questions, but they also have to fill out an NDA first, and it's all this stuff. And then they want you to open up your books and see, under the hood. And so it's a lot of going through that and finding the right fit. So if you have that first part of it, And then in my situation, I had a couple of companies that wanted to buy it that weren't a good fit, but would have given me more money. And I'm like, that wasn't of interest to me because I already had laid out my values and exactly what I wanted. And, the money part's great, but I didn't build this business really to make money. It was more of it was a passion project that turned into a prove to everyone that I can do it and prove it to myself project. And then really at the end of the day, I couldn't have done it without the 20 employees that I had, because I was riding a pretty good life there at the end. I would go on a trip every month. They were really running everything. And my husband's like, you're making more money than you've ever made. And your lifestyle is pretty great. Are you sure you want to sell? And I'm like, we grew so much over COVID that if I didn't take it to the next level, my numbers would start going like this. And so I'm like, I have to put it in someone else's hands that has way more people and resources. So it was a lot of finding the right buyer, which took about a year of constant meetings and constant negotiations. And then once we did get in the buyer, we had a meeting every single week for 4 months, where they would ask questions. I mean, because the deal's never signed until the very end. And then I had to go through the emotional part of telling the employees and they flew out and met the employees. And I didn't even an asset list check. Like, they want every serial number of every machine. Do you have warranties? Just everything. I'm just like, you can count all the paper and boxes if you want, but here's the number. I don't know. So it was a lot of work, tons.
Lots of little details that go into that.
Yep. Keep your books clean if you want to sell.
Keep the receipts. Keep the numbers straight.
Don't write off very much.
All right, Chari, we could go on forever. I'm going to ask you one or two more questions, and then we'll open it up to audience questions. So those in person and online, just be thinking if there's anything you want to ask. So we have two company names up here, Persnickety Prints and then Persnickety Box. So at what point did you start a second venture while you were still running your first one?
Okay, so during COVID, before COVID, okay, so I went through a divorce. Sucks. I don't recommend it. After 18 years of being married. And it's really weird being a mom of 3 kids, juggling business, juggling life. It was very stressful. But then all of a sudden I didn't have my kids for a week. And I'm like, this is so weird. What do I do with my time? And in the time, look, I tried to date regularly. It doesn't work. So I did get on Tinder. And these dating apps, it's what the kids do these days, Brittany. And I'm like, wait.
My husband, Chari.
Yes. I'm like, wait, this is kind of fun. Like, photos, swiping, like, okay. And even today, I'll be with my single girlfriends. I'm like, ooh, let's swipe. Like, it's kind of a game. And so I'm like, how do I gamify printing photos? And so as I was swiping, trying to find my husband, I was also like, this would be a cool concept for photos and for printing. And so I launched Persnickety Box. Again, I didn't really have a ton of knowledge in the app world, but then I heard about Rev Road. And I met Natalie, who runs Prepare. Love Natalie. I met her at a party, at an influencer party. And I'm like, yeah, I launched this app. And at the time, I had interviewed app developers, and I found one that would freelance for me on the side. But it took him. So I started this app back in 2019-ish, and was just paying out of pocket. And it was like so expensive. And when you're working freelance, he would work like once a week. So it was very, very slow. And I didn't realize that software expired and that we have to move faster. And so again, trying to learn all the things. And so I launched Persnickety Box with RevRoad in 2021, set it up as a separate entity. And this is much more of a scalable model than Persnickety Prints, which is a brick and mortar e-commerce store that's really boutique and focused on customer service. And then as I learned the fulfillment side and the operations of printing photos, I realized it's much easier to print one size, one paper type. It's faster, it's more cost effective. And so how can I take all of that and gamify it, because everyone's taking photos on their phone now, and create something that people can get their pictures off of their phone and into their hands in an easy way. And so that I created Persnickety Box, and I pitched to Rev Road, and I had never had an investor in my life, and I had never pitched, but they were so great to me, and I came in and tried to prove everybody wrong. Bruce, to this day, he's not here, but trying to tell me that my app would cost in the App Store, but it doesn't, because it's a deliverable. So anyway, I had to learn everything so that I could come in and pitch this idea to Rev Road, and I launched Persnickety Box, and it's an app that swipes like Tinder photos into your box, and these are pictures, 30 pictures.
Drop me the whole list, or
Oh yeah. 30 pictures arrive in the box. That's pictures of Japan, for those of you that went to Japan with Rev Road last year. Such a sweet time, so awesome. And they're silver highlight darkroom pictures. They're 4x4 square. They are delivered in a keepsake story box you can write on the sides, just kind of keep them organized. And it's really the market that we're really focusing on is the young mom that doesn't have time to scrapbook, that really wants to print their kids' baby pictures so that they have something to look at when they're older.
Just a little personal anecdote. I do have one of those for after my baby was born. I printed out
I love that.
Persnickety box of her birth and everything.
It's insurance. It's life insurance right there.
And I can't wait till she one day gets to thumb through those with her own little hands and see those pictures. I think it's so
And there's no ink. They'll never fade, and she won't, like, you can wipe them off. Like, they're indestructible prints.
That's so
that's
cool.
great.
Okay, so my last question for you is, can you just tell us a little bit more about, you kind of mentioned this at the beginning, that you were 35 when you started this business. You shared the stories of knocking doors and working with partners that it didn't work out, and eventually you figured something out. You scaled to $1 million. Eventually you sailed it. You started another thing. Just having that patience to go through all of those failures and figuring it out, what kept you moving forward? What was your motivation?
I love that. Everyone has different motivation. So, and maybe it comes from childhood trauma. Maybe it comes from not having another option. And so I think we're all motivated differently. I definitely had passion and I enjoyed it. And I love winning. I'm very competitive, sports, anything. And I'm probably the most competitive with myself, which also can be a bad thing. So I'm really hard on myself, but I've overcome that through a lot of therapy. But yeah, I think just keeping going, not wanting to, problem solving became more of like, okay, like, let's figure out how to fix this machine, or instead of, a reactive event. I had to really learn not to react and just learn how to kind of go with the flow, because there's always an employee that's not going to show up and things go wrong. But your question was just, how did you keep going? And the patience thing, I think, is something too that we should talk about. Like, even like anyone that you talk to that started business, there's very few businesses that go from zero to hero in less than 5 years. And so I feel like we're in this era, or this generation, of everything's at our fingertips. We all, instant gratification. Amazon delivers tomorrow. But when you're building a business, you're building, and it takes time, and you may have ups and downs and ups and downs. And if you're willing to just keep going and not quit, sometimes it pivots, right? Like, I started with the scrapbooking 12 by 12. That became more of like a hero product. And then we moved into squares and books and cards and calendars. And so any product that you're selling, that could be your start, but just keep the ball rolling and keep moving.
Okay, thank you, Chari. Let's turn the time over to audience questions. If you have a question in person, please raise your hand and we'll bring you a mic. If you're online, we'll have Brett watching the chat. So just enter your question to the chat and we'll read it aloud.
All right, give it to me, Steve.
Yeah, right off the bat, where does the name come from?
Oh, that's a good question. So it was a $10 domain, which was hard to find. And persnickety means fussy about the small details. So persnickety prints. When we bought Scrapping Simply, we bought a few other domains, and so I took that with me when I left Rex. That's a good question. It is a little bit long of a name, but it worked. It's worked. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Chari. You've seen a lot of technology changes over the years. How did you keep up with that in terms of cameras, in terms of formats, in terms of equipment? What strategy did you use to kind of stay current?
That was always a hard one. Technology was his question. And I feel like that's one of the reasons, like, okay, now we have AI. Now we have, it's technology is always changing. Phones, like, we don't need a 30 megabyte picture. It's not going to help your 4x6. Like, there's so many aspects of the business. I was wearing a lot of hats. Like, I was tired. We started out with the iPhone 4 and grew into this. And so where we're at now, technology was always hard, and I used partners for that. So the difference with Persnickety Prints is we really focused on the deliverables, whereas like a Costco or a Shutterfly, which were our competitors, they had the $1 million platforms, but also didn't focus on the boutique customer or, on that individual customer. So I feel like that's where we won. So instead, I outsourced software, which got expensive, but having that right partner in software was hard. I had to really prove myself. I was the only female in this man's world of photo printing, and I'd go to these conventions, and there's a handful of software platforms that will take a photo, upload it, put it on my server where I can print it, and I really had to build those relationships and work with them to keep them going. So that was actually always a struggle. Right when the square printing came out, I was kind of stuck with this software platform that I had to really get on the phone with them and be like, no, we need this, because if they didn't offer it online from the customer, then I couldn't offer it. And so it really was a holdback, but I also couldn't spend $10 million a year on developing my own software. So it was always a big hurdle, was the software part, for sure.
With your current venture, it seems very tied to the business that you just sold with the names. How have you navigated that, and how have you protected yourself maybe if Persickety's Prints goes in a direction
versus Bob? Like? That's a great question. So that was also one of the things that was very heavily negotiated with this partnership. So because the name Persnickety is trademarked, Persnickety Prints, and so I was very transparent. I have this. We'll see how it goes, because we're almost a year out and it's worked okay. But right now, Persnickety Prints is processing the pictures for Box. So I told them that I would keep, and they're making more money than I am because they're the ones that are manufacturing it. But since it's scalable, I can focus on growth, and then I can also use other labs if I have to. It's the Shutterfly model. It's shipping them out. It's not my favorite, but I've dialed in that print that it's going to be a quality product for the customer. But that's a very good question. Right now in the Persnickety Box app, there's a link that if a customer wants a different print size because it's limited to 4x4, then it links them directly to prints. So we're working together right now under a very loose contract, but that's a very good question, and we'll see what happens, but everything's out on the table so far.
Okay, two-part question. Why do you think that the photo and print world has been a man's domain thus far? And have you seen shifts in that? Like, are more women taking over? Have you seen any of that?
I think a lot of people in the, it's a manufacturing, like Persnickety Prints, if you go to the store, we have machinery. I mean, it is like, and any man, so we go to these conventions, and in Vegas every year, and every photo lab is owned by a man. So it just is. But there are a few women, and women in software and tech is very little. I think it's becoming bigger and bigger for women to really grasp tech and software. I wish I would have had classes when I was younger, because I love it. I love computer programming and things like that, but it wasn't available to me. But yeah, I think it's definitely changing. There's a woman out of Canada that built this whole online platform for people, like a plugin for photo book building, and it's a whole women-based company. So it's definitely changing, but if you think of the old school photo labs, like for example, the Alexanders, I'm really good friends with them. They have this huge lab down in Provo. He started it 50 years ago over at BYU. There are a lot of older business owners in the photo lab market. Yeah. If you're ready to enter, I will I will help you.
This will be our last question.
Ooh, okay, I better make it good. Shari, we love you. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Okay, talk to us about parenting while being an entrepreneur and how the heck did you do it and what tips or things did you learn along the way that we can try?
Oh, that's a very good question. Mom guilt is a real thing, and I don't want to. I promised my son that's here that I wouldn't put attention to him, but we could probably ask him how he felt. He was 3 years old when I started Persnickety Friends. He'll be so mad at me after this, but it's hard juggling both, right? Because no matter what, the school is going to call the mom. But I feel like it's getting better with that stigma. I grew up with a grandmother and my mother that was like, you need to be home, make your husband lunch, and like that's my thing. And my mom would get mad at me that I was always on my computer until I started paying her bills, and then she kind of understood it, but she didn't understand it. She thought I went to work to scrapbook. But being a mom and an entrepreneur at the same time is very, very hard. But to be honest, I've seen a lot of women do it and be really successful at it. And sometimes I feel like the kids turn out a little bit better because they aren't helicoptered. And I feel like in Utah, it's kind of a, I don't know, social media kills everything, right? And so you compare to the other moms and this perfect house and this perfect this, and it's just, it's hard. It's a lot of pressure. And for me, I put a lot of pressure on myself. I never had a nanny because I thought, oh, I could do it all. And here I am with a broken knee and early menopause. So whatever you want to put yourself through. But I feel like there needs to be balance and really communicate with your spouse what your needs are. I didn't really feel like I had those tools. Like, I really love this. And so many times I'm like, I don't have to work. I don't have to work. And he's like, no, this is great. We have extra income. But we didn't really talk about, well, I feel guilty or anything like that. He was really good support. He didn't make me feel guilty. It was mostly myself. But I feel like, it's okay to have a nanny. It's okay to put him in a daycare for a few hours a day. It is. Like, it teaches them social skills. It teaches the kids so much more. And guess what? All of my kids are grown up and gone now. They don't even need me anymore. And this is when a lot of people have their nervous breakdowns or midlife crisis because they're like, now what do I do? So it's okay for moms to have some sort of passion as well. That's a good question.
Okay, thank you so much for questions and for all of your insights. As we always do, just to wrap up, Rev U, we want to ask you our final question, which is, what is something fun that your success has allowed you to do?
Oh, travel, for sure. Travel, seeing the world, it makes me feel the most alive. Meet new people is actually before travel. Like, if I stayed the stay-at-home mom, I would be still in a bubble of about 20 humans in my world, right? And I have met all of you, and I'll start crying because, like, Rev Road's my second family, and the relationships that I've curated through business and even being able to help people through photos with funerals and things that have happened is like priceless.
I love that. Thank you so much. Okay,
Thanks
thank you
for having
for
me.
your time, Shari, and we have a little gift basket for you here.
Sweet.
And yes, thank you. This was so fun. We'll turn the time back over to Fonzie.